Clemson Tiger fans, welcome back to another edition of the Clemson Sports Show. Joined as always by the great Matthew Connolly. We are going to be talking a little bit about Clemson's 2022 class. Before we get into that, Matt, how are you doing today, man?
Yeah, doing well. Excited for, the Super Bowl is coming up here in a few days.
Yep.
Watched about 10 minutes of the Pro Bowl last night, and that was about all I could take. But, hanging in there. How about you?
Yeah, so I didn't get to watch the Pro Bowl too much. I was at 7-on-7 practices, Hustle Inc. and Grind Factory in Georgia. Got to talk to Caleb Downs, got to talk to a few prospects. So I missed it. And from everything that I saw on Twitter and what my friends were telling me, it seems like I didn't miss much at all.
Yeah, congrats on that. That's awesome. Glad you got to miss it.
Yeah, it was really good timing with all those practices, and good timing too to go see Caleb Downs. Took a surprise visit to Clemson. Maybe we'll touch on that later, but this episode is focused primarily on Clemson's 2022 class. More specifically, we're going to assign grades for how they did at each position group. Matt, let's start off with quarterback. We're going to count in transfer quarterback Hunter Johnson in this one, but obviously the big get here is Cade Klubnik. What did you think about what Clemson did at quarterback in this cycle?
Yeah, for me, it's a pretty easy A. You bring in a freshman who's one of the best in the country, a guy that was great at the at the All-American game, really lit it up there. I think is, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the country coming out of high school. And then you also add in Hunter Johnson, who's a veteran, who's been around Clemson, knows the program, knows what Dabo Swinney expects. He's fine coming in, just being a guy that can kind of help out the younger guys. He's not looking to come in and be a starter, and there's not going to be any kind of controversy there or anything like that. So for me, it was a pretty easy A. What about you?
Yeah, I'm giving an A here. Tempted to give an A+, honestly. I just think with Cade getting him in this class and how early they were able to get him into class too, back in March 2021, he was able to contribute in their efforts of landing several key prospects, Antonio Williams being one of them, also assisted in their pursuit of some recruitments in the summer that Clemson was able to close out on at the time. Obviously they lost a few commitments in December, but yeah, I would go with an A here. Cade just impressed me throughout the whole week at the All-American Bowl in San Antonio. I saw him every single day. He lit it up. The first day he was a little bit off, and it was because he had been off throwing for about a week and a half. After that, once he got into a rhythm, he was throwing with so much accuracy, throwing with so much precision on his passes. The footwork was always there, even if the arm strength wasn't. And speaking of the arm strength, I saw a few plays that, even though I was a little bit, concerned about, his strength, his arm power, how he would be able to get the ball down the field, how he'd be able to push it down the field. He had a few really good plays where, is running to the left or running to the right, and he's able to throw it with precision and also that arm power that you're looking for. And I thought he was the best quarterback during All-American Bowl week. I think an argument could be made that he's the best quarterback in the 2022 class. I know On3 doesn't have him at that, but I think an argument could be made. He just lit it up, and I don't think he's going to be a day one contributor in 2022, but he's definitely going to be Clemson's future moving forward. And then, like you mentioned, Hunter Johnson, not a guy you're expecting to see on the field. He's going to help out in the locker room. I just think solid overall A for me.
Yeah, and with Cade, I'll mention too, you touched on the arm strength, and I don't think he has the best arm strength in this class. He doesn't have the strongest arm for sure. But he has the arm strength to make every throw, and then he has elite accuracy. I mean, those throws he made, his first touchdown pass in the All-American game was just insane. The back of the end zone really fit the ball into a small window. So very impressed with him. And like you mentioned, Hunter Johnson coming in to be a veteran backup guy who, look, I mean, he can play. He's a former 5-star quarterback. He made some starts in Northwestern. He wasn't
had a really good
there.
game against Michigan State in the season opener. Nearly 300 yards, 3 TDs, 0 interceptions. I mean, that was a really good game by him.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, he has a ceiling. He did play well at times in Northwestern. He also didn't have much offensive talent around him. I think it's kind of like a similar situation where you saw Chase Bryce go to Duke, and all of a sudden he's not nearly as good as he was at Clemson. The Clemson offense, the Clemson talent they have around him is much better than he had in Northwestern, obviously. So, yeah, I think it's a very nice position Clemson's in. Let's move on now, and I don't have the order in front of me, but so I'm just going to kind of go down the line and my theory and how I want to do it, if that's okay. I'll run to running back. maybe we're going from good to bad here, but what did you think of the job Clemson did at running back this class?
Yeah, so you put me on the spot here with this one. You got to start off with the quarterback and talking about how great Clemson did, and now we're going to go to running back where, look, it wasn't good. I think you would have to say D plus at best with how the running back results turned out. And it's nothing against Keith Adam. It's just about what they set out to do and what they were able to accomplish in the end. The goal was to get Trevor Etienne in this class at one point. We know that. They hosted him on campus for an official visit. They wanted him. That didn't end up happening. But at the same time, they knew, okay, Andrew Paul, we're going to keep him on the back burner. If things go sideways with Etienne, which it ultimately did, we'll be able to offer him, which is what they did 2 days before Etienne's announcement. They got into the mix. And look, I'm not really going to fault Clemson too much for Georgia jumping into the mix for Paul and the running back tradition that they have coming off a national championship. That was tough for them. But look, at the end of the day, this is a results-driven business. What are you able to get in the end when it's all said and done? And when it's all said and done, they got a guy who they initially offered as a gray shirt running back. That means that he wouldn't have even played this year. He wouldn't be a part of the football team until next year, 2023. So that's what the initial plan was with Keith. They've had to readjust that, make him a scholarship player because of, the miss with Etienne. And maybe we said it before, there wasn't any tie between his offer and Andrew Paul's offer, but they wanted 5 scholarship running backs in the room in 2022. We know that. They didn't accomplish that goal. I'm giving them a D plus for it as a result. What about you?
Yeah, I'm going with the same. And I will give Clemson a little bit of credit in that, like, also ultimately when you have 3 really good running backs on the roster who were just underclassmen, you have obviously Will Shipley going into a sophomore year, Kobe Pace going to be a junior. Mm-hmm. Those are 2 of the best running backs in the ACC, possibly even in the country. And now you got Phil Maffa, who's he's going to be a sophomore, who's also a pretty good player, who's also done some good things. Yeah. So man, when you have those 3 backs, it's not easy to go out and say, hey, come join our program, come sit on the bench for 2 years, probably at least. So in that retrospect, I kind of get it, just because it was hard to go and find a guy. But like you said, it's a results business. And ultimately, they got a guy that, and Keith Adams, who's a legacy prospect who, didn't really have many other offers. He's not really, just watching this film, it seems like he's more of a bruiser type back who maybe can help out short yardage, but I don't know that he's going to be an every down back or a third down back. So look, they did get a body. They did get someone who can come in, be a 4th string guy, provide, some depth if they need it. So in that retrospect, it was good, or in that area, it was good. But yeah, definitely not what they set out to do at running back this class.
I think my biggest issue is, look, we were told at the All-American Bowl that it seemed like Etienne had made his mind up potentially a few weeks before that, he knew that he was going to be going to Florida. And if I was to predict when that may have happened, I would say that late November trip that he took for the Florida State game, he went there on his own dime and he saw the program. And even though the whole change with Dan Mullen happened, the coaching staff there at Florida, it really felt like the Gators were the leader throughout that whole process. So if you knew that was the case, why not just offer Paul after the state title game in early December? If you knew, or if you had the feeling that Etienne may be heading elsewhere, just add Paul to the mix. And it seems like the ultimate goal, at least in January, as the recruiting cycle progressed, was, as I mentioned, to get 5 scholarship running backs in the room. Why not offer Paul at the same time you're pursuing Etienne? And if you're able to get both of them, fine. If you're able to get one, that's okay. You go after Adams. So yeah, I don't know, the whole particulars of what went down, the whole process. So I'm going to admit to that. Maybe there was a different plan in place. Maybe the departures of Lynn J. Dixon and Michael Dukes changed up some things drastically for them. But the end result here is Clemson cannot have the injuries that they had to running back last year coming up in 2022. If not, they're really in a bad position.
And before we move on, the last thing I'll say is, we mentioned Hunter Johnson as a transfer addition and counted him for the quarterbacks. It's not too late for Clemson to still add a running back possibly at some point. Mm-hmm. I don't think anything's imminent in that aspect, but it's still several months. I mean, we're looking at August until fall camp starts and things really get going. So
Yeah.
wouldn't be completely stunned if Clemson has a running back at some point.
Yep, and I completely agree with you. Let's keep an eye on the transfer portal. Let's keep an eye on maybe some players in this class making a transition to running back. I tell you, I'm keep on putting out Kobe McLeod's name. I really think he could be that guy if they want to, just as a 1-year placeholder. We'll see. Let's get on over.
And look, hey, and I'll mention one more point real quick with that. Like Dabo's not afraid to move guys' position. I mean, Darian Kendrick was a 5-star receiver coming in who was a very good receiver, and they needed help at cornerback, and he went and played cornerback and just won a national title with Georgia. Obviously, won a national title with Clemson. Had a great season at quarterback at Georgia. I think he'll be a pretty high draft pick this year. So definitely, the staff's not afraid to move guys' positions.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility, and we'll see what they end up doing. Still plenty of time left, as you mentioned. Let's go on over to wide receiver. Clemson was able to sign Adam Randall, Antonio Williams. Those are the two big fish at the position in this class. And then later on, not Christmas Eve, excuse me, New Year's Eve, they decided to offer Cole Turner. He ended up committing a couple weeks later and signing last week. What do you think about the wide receiver class?
So I'm gonna let you go first since I just took the good one to start. So go ahead. What do you think of the receivers?
Yeah, so I'm going to give an A here. And honestly, had I decided to assign the grades back on December 15th, which is when they signed Randall and Williams, I may have said a B plus or an A minus, but it elevated just because of the performance that both of them put on display during the Under Armour All-American Game Week prep in Orlando, Florida at the end of December. They stood out, both of them. They were really, really impressive. Now, Adam Randall, once again, I keep on mentioning it. He's going to come in as possibly one of the most physically developed college wide receivers as a freshman that we've seen in a good amount of time. Cade Klubnik's referred to him as Julio Jones 2.0. He's a big kid, can run routes. He's got the speed to go along with it, really good hands, strong hands. He's taking time even at running back too, just kind of showing the power that he has at the position. He's going to be a tough player to go up against. At the next level. I know he's going to primarily be on the outside, but I've seen him go inside at times as well. Just a very versatile player. And then Antonio Williams, I mean, this kid just gets open. This kid gets open every single time. I really like him, using him as a deep threat on go routes and letting him show off his speed, but he can still do it with quick out routes and jet sweeps, whatever you want to do, working that 5 to 10 yard range. Antonio can kind of do it all. One of the best route runners in this class, our scouting expert Charles Powers said that about him. One of the most refined route runners he's seen in the 2022 cycle. So yeah, I'm really, really impressed. And Cole Turner could be a sleeper, when it's all said and done. I know, some people may be upset with Clemson once again offering a player who's related to a former Tiger and who didn't have many big time offers. But if you put on his tape, you see a guy who can go up, get passes, high point the football, win 50-50 balls, has some speed to get down the field. I'm a little bit, I question the competition in terms of how fast he is compared to them or how slow they are compared to him, that kind of thing. But, there's some potential there. He's a big kid. So, yeah, I really like what Clemson did at wide receiver. What about yourself?
Yeah, and I'm not going to spend as much time as you because you pretty much said about everything I want to. I mean, I think they got two studs and Adam Randall and Antonio Williams, kind of different guys. One's, like you said, built almost like an NFL player already, just a really big body. Hey, that's what Charles Power, that's what he texted me and said. He looks almost like an NFL player. So,
yeah.
One in Adam Randall, who's a really big guy, big physical, strong guy. And Antonio Williams, who's a smaller, quicker, like you said, gets open to pretty much every route. I think you pretty much covered it all there. I would give it an A as well. And Cole Turner, I agree. I think he's a prospect to watch out for down the road. I don't think he's a, early come in and going to start or anything like that, but he's played 2 years of football. He switched over to receiver. You can tell he's a really good athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Dabo said he's faster than Nolan and bigger than Nolan and a better athlete than Nolan. So, we know what Nolan ended up being at Clemson, the guy that started for several years, made a ton of big plays, clinched the Fiesta Bowl a few years ago against Ohio State. So, hey, I mean, if Cole Turner can have anywhere near the kind of career on the offensive side of the ball that Nolan had on the defensive side, Clemson will be thrilled.
And I really like how Clemson adjusted their mindset in this process here. You know, you had the decommitments, you had the players go to the transfer portal, and for them to find these guys later on in the process, I thought that was really good for them. Even if it's just going to add some depth and continue that family culture that is continued to be praised by recruits I speak with, and you know that the whole program's built around. So yeah, once again, Cole Turner obviously not the caliber of prospect Adam Randall and Antonio Williams are, but you know he's a good addition. And then Randall and Williams, the reason why I give this position group an A is just because of the sense of urgency to get players at that position and to get players who could potentially contribute immediately. I mean, Matt, you lose a Joe, Frank Ladson to the transfer portal. You lost Justin Ross to the NFL draft, and I mentioned it before, mentioned it again. Joe Ngata, his injury history. You're going to need some receivers who can step in, and Troy Stellato didn't get much time last year, so you know he kind of remains a question mark. Bo Collins, Dakari Collins, we obviously know what they can do. They contributed toward the end of last season, but you're going to still need some guys who can come in and help, especially in the slot. So Antonio, you know that's a big time win, and to get him after going after Andre Green, not offering Antonio until less than a month to go until signing period. Much credit should be given to Tyler Grisham. He did an excellent job recruiting both of those prospects and then also adding Cole Turner.
Yeah, I think Antonio, I would have maybe put him in position to start if he was enrolling early. The fact that he's coming in the summer, I think it's going to make it really hard just because, you know, this is a tough offense to learn. I think that's part of what kind of hurt Troy Stellato last year is he missed spring practice, missed the summer stuff, or at least some of the summer stuff. And so he was kind of behind from the start, and they got banged up some in fall camp and just kind of trying to kind of swimming uphill the whole time. But yeah, I mean, I think Antonio is super talented. Another guy, you know, I know Clemson fans might laugh or whatever, but hey, Will Sweeney started the last 3 games of the year. I mean, and he's gone too. So definitely some snaps out there for receivers to come in and get. Let's keep it moving now. We'll go to offensive line next. Stay with the offensive side of the ball. What do you think of the job the class did on the offensive line?
Yeah, so I really like what Clemson did at the offensive line position. I'll give it an A, potentially an A-, just because they got the guys that they wanted to get. And I know that Notre Dame had made a strong push for Colin Sadler, but Clemson was still able to hold on to him. I've seen him in person a couple of times. I really like his skill set. He's a road grader. He's going to be a fan favorite, plays until the end of the whistle. He can move inside or outside, in my opinion. He's got really good mobility, can contribute in lead blocks down the field, get to the second level, make blocks. So I think Colin could be somebody year 2, year 3 that you see emerge as a starter. You know, I think Clemson's offensive line depth is pretty good right now, so it may be tough for him to get to that starting position, same as Blake Miller, but I like his future. And then Blake, yeah, big kid, you know, 6'5". Yeah, I think he's north of 300 pounds. You're a really big kid, really athletic as well. He blocked a field goal in one of his games. You know, he can get up. So, and I think he plays basketball as well. So, yeah, I like what they did at the offensive line group. And I think it's just going to continue to get better with recruiting moving forward.
Yeah, I'll go B+, A-. You know, I think they did a really nice job. And I haven't watched a ton of film of these guys, but what stands out to me when I did watch is this, I guess, the nastiness maybe that you look for in an offensive lineman. Like they play to the whistle every single play, at least on their highlight film, which is kind of what you're looking for. And I know, you know, the offensive line, Clemson's offensive line, Matt Bachor spoke about it. They felt like they were missing some of that last year, at least probably even the last couple of years. Just guys that'll play to the whistle. I don't say go over the line, but maybe push the line as far as just, you know, get in your face and get after it. So I think Clemson's offensive line really needs that. I think the staff was looking for that, and I think both of those guys do that. And I say that as a full compliment.
So, Matt, somebody who is going to be used for his blocking at the next level, that's one of his top attributes, is Josh Sapp. The tight end position, obviously, they missed out on Oscar Delp. Don't really know how much they were in the mix for Jaleel Skinner, but Delp was definitely the main target. What do you think about how tight end recruiting finished for Clemson?
Yeah, I would go C-. something around in there.
Yeah.
I think I think he can help in some ways. Like, I don't think he's, one of the guys that's going to come in and, have 30 catches and 500 yards or anything like that. But I think that he can do a lot of different things pretty well. I think he's obviously a pretty big body as far as, weight and kind of holding his own there. So I think he'll be able to help out some in blocking, which is never a bad thing with a tight end. I know you think he can maybe be an H-back type guy. Just what do you grade or what do you think of him?
Yeah, so Sapp is somebody who works the middle of the field really well. And like Sadler, I've seen him a couple of times. He does an excellent job of finding those open spaces in between linebacker and the safety. He's just able to work the middle of the field pretty well. He's got pretty good speed in that game against Malden that I saw them play last season. He beat Jaden Lucas on a route, toward the middle of the field, but Jaden's got so much recovery speed that he was able to get back into the picture. But he's got some decent speed. He's got some pretty good route running. He's a good blocker, as we mentioned before. He's been used as a running back, as a quarterback, and jet sweep. So, he's somebody that you're just going to be able to move, different parts around the field. Once again, like you mentioned with Antonio Williams, not going to be enrolling in the spring. He's going to be a summer enrollee and is playing basketball right now. That's the reason why. So you would have hoped that he would have gotten some time earlier on, but let's see what Clemson decides to end up doing with the tight end position. Obviously, they got Davis Allen and Jake Brenningstool, and you figure that they may be set for this year at least. But I think Sapp could potentially get some time. Will Taylor was somebody last season that kind of surprised us in terms of how much he contributed to the offense. I think Sapp could kind of be that guy in this class here. Matt, let's move on over to the defensive line. Jaheim Lawson, who you spoke with recently, Caden Story, who I spoke with recently. What's your grade for that group?
Yeah, I'll go C+, B-, somewhere around in there. I think Jaheim is a guy that's not going to come in and contribute right away, and he knows that. He basically told me that he's not even thinking about playing year one. So I think he's a developmental guy that you hope ends up turning into a decent player, maybe a pass rushing specialist. He probably needs to add 30 pounds or so to try to get to a play-in weight, but that's something he can do. I had a story on ClemsonSports.com today about how Shaq Lawson's trying to help him out, and it's gotten a personal trainer for him, and got him on a eating plan and that kind of stuff, which is obviously great. It's great having a brother who's in the NFL who kind of knows the way to do things and could help out there. So, I think he has a chance to be a guy down the road who can help some as a pass rusher. And then Caden Story was a huge get late that, obviously Clemson beat out Florida for, beat out Auburn as well, a team that he was previously committed to. I think the good thing with both of those guys, and Caden is obviously the better, more highly ranked prospect of the two, I think has a chance to really help down the road. But I think the good thing about both of those guys is they don't need to come in and help right away. And kind of the same way as it was as running back, like Clemson's pretty set for next year at defensive line. And so, getting some guys that are okay with coming in, waiting their turn, and playing when, they're called upon down the road, I think is good. So I'll probably lean more B- than C+, but kind of right in that area.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit going back and forth with myself in terms of how I would grade the defensive line position, because part of it is Todd Bates and what he was able to do or what he wasn't able to do, and what we've heard about him from Travis Shaw, who ended up going to North Carolina. So I really feel like I can't hold that against Clemson. At the same time, they did miss out on Curtis Perry, who they had offered in September. They weren't able to even really get into the mix for Marvin Jones Jr., who they offered in September as well. So that was kind of a couple of weird offers. And I feel like you got to hold that against them a little bit in terms of not really being able to become strong contenders for either of them. Why were those offers extended in the first place? But in terms of the finish, getting Jaheim Lawson, finding him, he's somebody who was pursued by Georgia Tech and Syracuse, not that the top programs in college football, but, a couple decent programs that gave Clemson a run for their money last season. So, yeah, I think that was a pretty good win, and especially what Jaheim told you in terms of potentially wanting to create his own path and deciding that, he was going to go to Clemson anyways. I thought that was a pretty good victory for them. But obviously, Caden Story is the big story here. No pun intended. He's the big story. Nick Eason really just showing how much of an impact he's going to have on Clemson football recruiting moving forward. I think for that reason, I'll probably lean toward a C plus with this response. I just think it's so positive for Clemson fans to see the potential that Nick Eason will have on this staff because of what he was able to do with Story in less than a month, less than a few weeks time. So yeah, I would probably give them a C plus, and I'm factoring in a couple of those other misses as well.
I like that. All right, let's go ahead and move on to linebacker. What do you think of how that group did and how that went?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to stay in the C range for this response here. And once again, it's tough to really fault Clemson too much for what happened, but I have to factor in Jaren Kanak, not staying in this class and ultimately ended up deciding to follow Brent Venables to Oklahoma. I know that's some Clemson fans may be upset with me about blaming them too much on this one here, but I have to factor it in. Once again, it's a results-driven business. If Kanak is a part of this class, it brings it to a B plus, in my opinion. I may have been a little bit unfair. I think I'm going to go C plus here. TJ Dudley was a good addition for the program, but once again, I don't know how hard some of those other schools were pursuing him. It didn't sound like too much from the Texas and Oregon perspective. And then once again, the Florida official visit that he had set up, it got canceled. You bring in Kobe McLeod, who was committed to Florida International University for a few months. It's funny, Dabo Swinney actually called him up, and he didn't even know that Kobe didn't sign with FIU, and found that out during their conversation, and that's kind of what led to the offer. But he didn't have any Power 5 schools really after him later in the process. He had a few early on in his recruitment, but not much competition there. And then Wade Woodaz, he picked up his recruitment toward the end. I thought that was actually a solid win for them. I'm not expecting him to contribute this year, but he presents some interesting combinations with his athleticism, potentially putting him at safety, putting him in the box, maybe stand up edge rusher. So I like Wade a little bit, but there isn't that big time name, that big time addition that, is in the quarterback room with Cade Klubnik or the wide receiver room. So I think I'm going to lean C plus here.
Yeah, I'm going to go C plus too. And I think, I like TJ Dudley as a prospect. I mean, I think he's a guy that has decent size. I know not all schools were pushing for him late, but I think that might have been a mistake on their part, honestly. I mean, watching his film, I think he's a really good prospect. I think he's got a chance to help Clemson down the road for sure. Wade Woodaz, kind of the same thing. I mean, I think, both of those guys are solid players who are going to come in, play well for Wes Goodwin, be solid additions and nice linebackers, and not be counted on right away. That's the good thing about, honestly, Clemson's entire defense, or at least for the most part, at least the front seven. I mean, you have some pretty good linebackers already on the roster. Derek Carter, Trenton Simpson. I mean, some of these guys that you're expecting to play a big role next year. So, yeah, I think that they're in decent shape there. Like you said, not a great linebacker class. Would have been better with Jaren Kanak, but still a pretty good group. Kobe. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to add with our grading system here, a C plus is still passing, and it's we think they did.
Yeah, I would have loved more C pluses when I was in college. So
yeah, so see, that's the thing. Like, this is a passing grade. This is like Clemson. For the expectations we had set out for them, they were able to slightly go over it. We just think that Kanak would have pushed it just a little bit higher, and it's not necessarily faulting Clemson for that. And once again, Wade Woodaz was a Venables guy, so that has to be taken into account too. Like, Venables wanted him and got him in this class, and even though Venables left, Woodaz ended up staying. So you have to factor that in. But just based on the criteria that we have established, it met more so that C plus range instead of getting into that B range. I think even with Kanak in this class, you can't get to an A or an A minus, but I do think Clemson did a fairly decent job, and you would agree.
Yeah, for sure. All right, for the last one, you want to do secondary as a whole, or you want to split up cornerback, safety?
Yeah, let's do secondary as a whole.
Okay. I'm going to go – man, I think I'm going to go B plus. even close to an A. Like I just really like this class. I mean, Jaden Lucas obviously I think is a stud. We all saw what he did in the Under Armour game. I think Toriano Pride, kind of the same thing. It was unfortunate. He had COVID and missed the All-American game, but I think he's another guy who's just complete stud. I think both of those guys have a chance to help right away, maybe. Clemson is losing both of his starting corners, has some young talent already on the roster, but I wouldn't be stunned to see those guys come in and at least get some playing time, maybe on special teams. Sherrod Covell, I think, is a very good player out of Virginia, a guy that's versatile, that can do some different things. And then Kylan Griffin, kind of the same thing, another guy who is versatile, who they added late to the class that I really like. So, yeah, I think the more I talk about it, the more I'm going to go A.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it too. As you were talking about it and just reflecting on the class and, what we were talking about before the show, it really feels like this secondary group is an A. And look, I know it could have been an A+, had you kept Dalen Everett and had you kept Keon Sabb, but I really like what Clemson was able to do in response to that. You get a Miles Oliver who may be probably the most underrated prospect in this class. He didn't even have an offer heading into December. I mean, and he picked up a late offer from Georgia Tech and a couple of others, but I mean, this kid was first team All-State in Class 6A Georgia football. That resonates to me. That means something.
For sure.
And Mike Reed's evaluation, I'm always going to trust it. He's not going to look for the stars. He's not going to look for who's the highest rated. He's going to look for who can contribute to his team. And you put on Miles Oliver's film, he's an athletic guy. He's a rangy cornerback. I think he's going to be able to play multiple spots on the field, which is what Clemson likes. So, yeah, I really like the addition of Oliver. And once again, Jaden Lucas. I mean, this kid is just super, super athletic. Has an incredible vertical, has really good ball skills. I've seen him a couple of times live pick off passes that most corners in this class couldn't pick off. Really good hands. Great recovery speed, as I mentioned before. Solid hip movement, can twist his hips. Very fluid in that respect. Toriano Pride, I think his athleticism is just off the charts, and he's going to be able to develop into a really, really, really good cornerback. I was actually talking with his trainer a few weeks ago, and he said he knew in the 8th grade, he's like, this is going to be one of the best defensive backs to come out of St. Louis. And he saw that early on, and Toriano's only continued to refine his skill set. You get Kylan Griffin later on in the process. He beat out the USC Trojans. He's another versatile defensive back who can play corner, play safety. Sherrod Covell, that's a big one just in terms of the North Carolina Clemson battles. Obviously we saw that a few times in the 2022 cycle. And Sherrod told me, after his official visit, he's like, we compete for championships at Clemson when comparing them to North Carolina. So I really like that. And I thought it was important, especially how North Carolina beat Clemson to the punch in Virginia for Andre Green Jr. and beat them out for Travis Shaw. I just think it's a really, really great secondary class. And it just goes to show how good of a recruiter Mike Reed is, and also Mickey Kahn. That future is going to be really bright in the secondary.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up this episode? Obviously, y'all check out ClemsonSports.com and come get your membership. We got a 7-day free trial going on. Joseph has some great stuff today on Caleb Downs and Peter Woods, 2 of the top prospects for Clemson in the class of 2023. But anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
We can't forget about the special teams players, Matt.
Okay.
Robert Gunn.
Go ahead
Jack
with your
Smith.
special teams ranking. Sorry.
Hey, I was kind of hoping that you'd be the special teams expert around here because, look, it's really tough in these settings to determine, what a player is going to be at the next level. Obviously, Jack Smith was rated as the #1 punter in the country. Robert Gunn, a really solid player, really solid kicker, but obviously it's just hard to see to project them at the next level. But we'll end up seeing, obviously Gunn's not going to be needed this year because BT Potter came back. Obviously Gunn tore his ACL too, so remains to be seen what happens with Jack Smith. But yeah, we have to count them in. They
that
are
is true.
Yeah,
no, that's true. All right. I'll give you a C+ special teams ranking as well. And
Oh,
look,
I'm
like
not
you
going
said, I
C
mean,
plus. I'll go B. I'll go B
all
plus.
right, B plus. Okay, I'm gonna go C plus. And we'll see. I mean, like you said, if you're gonna sign special teams players, they obviously got some good ones. I'm not sure that that was a huge need for this class, just
Yeah.
because they have. I think now they'll have two punters on scholarship and at least two kickers next year on scholarship as well. So that's more than you normally have. But hey, they liked them. They went and got them, locked them up, signed them. So we'll see what that ends up turning into and how they end up doing it. I think I'm with you, man. It's hard to tell in special teams. Like there's guys you think are going to be great, that were great in high school, that for whatever reason it just sometimes doesn't translate the
Yeah.
other way around. Maybe guys that are kind of under the radar who end up doing really well. So it's hard to say for sure. But yeah, I'll go C plus, and you go with your B plus.
Yeah, I'll take my B plus. What about overall class grade before we wrap up? What would you assign this 2022 class for Clemson?
I'm gonna go with B. I think it's a solid B. Like it's not the classes that we're necessarily accustomed to Clemson getting, but I think that they did a nice job, particularly considering you lose both coordinators, the decommits that they had, going and finding guys to replace them who maybe aren't as talented, but are at least areas of need where they got some guys that are pretty good players. So I'll go B. How about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with B plus here. And I know people kind of see some of my commentary, and I've been down on Clemson recruiting in some aspects. It isn't necessarily that. I just think there can be some small tweaks based off what I've heard from players and coaches that would take them to even higher levels than they've been before. Which, they've signed top 5 classes. They've been one of the best, if not the best, in the ACC for most of the Dabo Swinney run. So yeah, look, I'm going to go with a B plus in this class, and the reason why is I'm factoring in the loss of those coordinators, specifically Venables, how that led to 4 decommitments, and how they were able to bounce back. The fact that Clemson signed the top 15 class to me is unbelievable. You have, look, their worst season since 2014, which is 10-3 still, but some recruits may have seen that decline or may have felt like Clemson was on the decline. That didn't necessarily happen. That it wasn't a mass exodus for this 2022 class where Cade was leaving or Adam Randall was leaving and Antonio Williams committed elsewhere. And then, you lose Toriano Pryor and Jaden Lucas. It wasn't like that. It could have gotten really bad based off the coordinators leaving and the season that they had. But for Clemson to put together a fairly solid class, top to bottom, some areas lacking more so than others. Defensive line comes to mind, running back comes to mind. For them to finish with a top 15 class, third in the ACC, is just beyond impressive. Now you give them a full 2023 class to work with Wesley Goodwin as the coordinator, Brandon Streeter as the coordinator. You're in good spots with Christopher Vizina and Peter Woods, and I think they're potentially second or third for Justice Haynes. Like this could potentially end up being a top 5 class for Clemson come 2023. I really think it starts with what happened in 2022 and how they finished off there. So I'm going to go with a B plus here. I was fairly impressed with how Swinney and his staff responded.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm just a little behind you, but I agree. Very, very impressed overall. And I think, like you said, 2023 is off to a good start.
Yes, it is. So thank you all for tuning in. We really appreciate you all listening to this. We're going to try and roll out 2 podcasts a week if we can. I'm going to try and get some recruits on here too. So be sure to subscribe, stay tuned, follow our podcast pages on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Until next time, you all take care, and we'll see what Clemson basketball does against North Carolina and Duke this week. Looking forward to it.